So Michelle trashes dudes while urging women to act more like them.
We're always hedging, because in the back of our minds, we weren't raised with the certainty of maleness that, kind of the confidence that young men in their 30s have, which they haven't earned. They just have it. We don't start feeling that and owning that until our 50s and 60s at a time when we start to be treated as invisible in society.
So true. And it reminds me of my new book, Women Are Invisible at Age 50, and I couldn't be happier. Divorce rumors continue to escalate for the Obamas. Hopefully they can settle it like men.
It was all a setup from the start. They never wanted us to know. The Obamas were actually the main characters in a political reality show. Scripted, polished, and accidentally hilarious. Greg Gutfeld just ripped the curtain off their perfect image, and let's just say, Michelle's eyebrows may never recover. From secret book deals to Barack's Netflix audition tapes disguised as speeches, this roast is hotter than Obama's tan suit scandal. You won't believe what Gutfeld exposed. Watch before it mysteriously disappears.
Michelle Obama surprised fans on our new podcast by saying her pet peeve about her husband is that he's chronically late. For example, we're still waiting on him to admit he's from Kenya. And as for Barack's pet peeve about Michelle, he's mad that she keeps leaving the toilet seat up. When she cleans it. When she cleans it.
Barack Obama was always the guy who brought a teleprompter to a backyard barbecue and somehow made it sound like the Gettysburg Address. And Michelle, she turned a vegetable garden into a political power play, like lettuce was the new Pentagon. Together, they're like America's most self-important rom-com, except with fewer laughs and more lectures.
Michelle thinks American men suck.
Let me warn you, your rage does not exist in a vacuum. If we don't get this election right, your wife, your daughter, your mother, we as women will become collateral damage to your rage.
Julie, she says women are invisible. Which women are she talking about? All I see are women in commercials, in TV shows. They're all over the place and they're all yelling at everybody, telling them, I'm a woman.
She's got some serious issues. She needs to go to therapy.
Yes.
And maybe stop doing radio just altogether, because we don't want to hear her speak. But she talks about, how young men were confident, which makes sense because she seems like a pretty confident person growing up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, you tell me. But I will say this, and I do believe she's actually biological female. She just plays the role of a man really well. But I would say that I think that it's this kind of stupidity, these types of conversations that actually make women feel inferior. Yeah. I felt confident my whole life. I don't need Michelle Obama to tell me that I'm not going to be confident until 50, which is 30 years from now.
Yes.
Let's start with Barack, the man who thought the Nobel Peace Prize came with a Groupon for endless drone strikes. He accepted that shiny medal like it was a free coffee punch card, then promptly became the commander in somehow always right. The guy managed to go 8 years without ever admitting a single mistake, unless it was not inspiring us enough. He walked into every room like a motivational speaker who only motivates himself.
We have every right to demand that the men in our lives do better by us. We have to use our voices to make these choices clear to the men that we love. Our lives are worth more than their anger and disappointment.
What's that pitter-patter sound I'm hearing in the background? It's the footsteps of Barack running to vote for Trump.
And that's before we talk about his presidential memoir Part 1, because apparently even his memory needs a sequel. It was 768 pages of, let me explain how brilliant I was while not really doing anything wrong. Barack turned a global economic crisis into a TED Talk, and somehow came out looking like he personally saved the moon landing. The economy crawled, people suffered, but at least the press conferences were poetic.
But no amount of waste is acceptable, not when it's your money. Do you know the federal government pays for a website devoted to a folk music ensemble made up of forest rangers? They're called the Fiddlin' Foresters. I'll put their music on my iPod, but I'm not paying for their website.
Kennedy, just watching that now, so that was 2011. him and Trump are saying exactly the same thing, but he's not saying it as well. It's like he wasn't having fun with it.
But credit where it's due, he could read a teleprompter like Shakespeare reincarnated. He gave speeches like he was conducting the orchestra of Mount Olympus. Meanwhile, the actual policies were sleepier than Joe Biden in a recliner. Change turned into maybe next term. And yes, weekend slowly morphed into, you know what, maybe Congress is hard. He promised the tides would stop rising and then played golf while coastal cities bought inflatable furniture.
Obama doubled our debt. He doubled our national debt. He spent so much money and laid out this blueprint, and that was his legacy. And that is what Joe Biden was supposed to keep intact.
Don't mess with Joe.
Yeah,
don't mess.
Everybody knows Michelle. Let me be clear. Don't mess with Joe.
He didn't drain it. He installed dim lighting and called it a reflecting pool. For a guy who came in preaching transparency, he sure ran an administration that treated FOIA requests like hate mail. Surveillance expanded. Whistleblowers prosecuted. But hey, at least the drone strikes came with Spotify playlists and soaring rhetoric. But just when you thought the Obama legacy was about to settle into its overpriced Netflix deal, enter Michelle. Still furious that America dared to eat French fries. Her campaign against obesity was less about health and more about making elementary school lunches taste like sadness. Michelle turned nutrition into a government spongement punishment. Pizza became a war crime, cookies were contraband, and don't even ask about chocolate milk. It was rebranded as liquid regret. She was like the gym teacher of America's conscience. Except the gym teacher brought kale chips and a lecture on systemic inequality. Her arms got more coverage than most world crises, and somehow that was framed as a revolution. Meanwhile, she launched a book tour with stadium-level ticket prices and somehow managed to blame America for being tired while charging $500 0 cents for the front row.
Michelle Obama isn't as strong a Democratic candidate against former President Donald Trump as many Dems would have you believe. In a hypothetical matchup, my favorite kind. Trump wins with 47% of the vote compared to Michelle Obama's 44%. I guess some of the kids whose school lunches she ruined are finally old enough to vote.
Michelle was the overachieving dean, furiously disappointed that America didn't do its homework. And let's not forget their carefully curated public appearances, like a Hallmark card factory exploded on MSNBC. They show up at award shows like royalty descending from Olympus, beaming at each other like they're in a toothpaste commercial while silently judging the rest of us for not recycling. It's a brand, not a couple. PowerPoint meets Pinterest. Then came the Netflix era. Of course, the Obamas got a Netflix deal because when you've already led the free world, the next logical step is producing documentaries about how the free world is disappointing you. Barack narrates climate change like he's describing the fall of ancient Rome, and Michelle pops in to make sure your kids aren't eating Pop-Tarts. The content has the subtle tone of a TED Talk hosted by Gil. They turned post-presidency into an elite influencer career, podcasts, books, docuseries. Somehow, they managed to monetize gravitas. The Obamas became the couple that crashes the party and then charges for the hors d'oeuvres. They're not leaving the spotlight. They're monetizing the shadows.
Joey, it is kind of funny that they used to hate waste, but because they hate Trump more, they now love waste.
Yeah. I'm thinking the Fiddlin' Forsters was, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, compared to now.
I mean, over trans mice.
That's like wonderful. Now we have like trans porpoises in Uganda.
And don't be fooled by the carefully crafted, relatable image. Michelle gardening in a designer jacket, Barack making a Spotify playlist with the musical taste of a college radio. It's performative authenticity, like a reality show filmed in a presidential library. Nothing says just like you, like vacationing with billionaires and then lecturing America about economic inequality. But the best part, the way they've managed to stay omnipresent without technically being in politics is political ghosting. They're not running for office, but they're haunting every policy discussion like liberal poltergeists. Every time Biden forgets where he is, somewhere a reporter looks to Obama's Twitter for clarity. Meanwhile, every Democratic hopeful has to pledge allegiance to the Church of Obama just to get through a debate without being excommunicated. They've become the Vatican of virtue signaling. Even their silence is interpreted as divine intervention. They don't endorse, they bestow blessings. And still, somehow, they act like victims of a system they ran for 8 years. They sit atop a mountain of privilege, media worship, and speaking fees that rival GDPs and still manage to look mildly offended that everyone isn't clapping louder. They're the only people who can fly private to a climate summit and lecture you about your carbon footprint with a straight face.
But I will remind you, this was the same man who looked every American in the eye and said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. If you like your insurance, you can keep your insurance. It was a complete and utter lie. So I don't necessarily trust that he really wanted to enact the things that he said he wanted to enact. And as Kennedy pointed out, that all the spending went up and through the roof. But this is exactly right. It's always about the messenger, not the message with politics.
But let's talk about legacy. The Affordable Care Act, the one achievement that was supposed to be historic, turned out to be a bureaucratic Rubik's Cube of deductibles, loopholes, and website crashes. Obama promised to fix healthcare and instead delivered a web portal that made dial-up look fast. It's like building a rocket to Mars, only to discover it only flies to New Jersey. Then there's foreign policy, where Barack played geopolitical chess but left the board on fire. Libya turned into a choose-your-own disaster. Syria became an endless Rubik's Cube of red lines and diplomatic excuses. And don't forget the Iran deal, where he basically said, we'll give you money, and you pinky promise not to build bombs until we leave office. And Michelle, she created school lunch rules so strict they made prison food look indulgent. Kids across America learned that hunger builds character. Her anti-obesity campaign basically gave rise to black market Doritos trades. In middle school cafeterias, forget drug rings, sixth graders were bartering for Pud Cups like it was the Great Depression. They both played the long game of cultural control. Every media outlet fawns. Every celebrity wants a selfie. Even their dog got more positive coverage than actual political policies. The dog had a PR team. You think we're joking? That dog had a legacy. Meanwhile, real Americans were stuck choosing between rent and insulin.
Less time with the family. I'm taking a second job. We have no voice at our schools. So this anger, Miss Obama, is not one-sided. It's just the men are the ones trying to solution. And their solution is to vote for President Trump. And here's the thing. Their women are backing them up. So take that little message, curl it up in a little box, and give it to Mr. Garrison.
And yet, despite being two of the most adored humans in the liberal stratosphere, they never really own the messes they left behind. It's always someone else's fault: Congress, the system, the weather. They're allergic to accountability but fluent in inspirational quotes. Every failure was just a misunderstood success. Every criticism, a coded form of oppression. When they do appear in public, it's to receive another award, unveil another foundation, or announce yet another moral crusade from their mountaintop of brand-safe enlightenment. They don't show up to fix anything. They show up to commentate on the brokenness, like elite Yelp reviewers of civilization. And Michelle, bless her designer sneakers, never misses a moment to remind you she hates politics. Right before she makes another speech about politics, she claims to rise above, but somehow still manages to throw shade from a moral balcony with excellent lighting. She's like a pageant judge who claims to be impartial while holding up a giant 10 for her own performance. Barack? He still thinks being cool is a leadership style. He's the dad at the barbecue who won't stop quoting Kendrick Lamar while handing out copies of his memoir.
Do you think Obama and Trump actually get along? Ooh. I always think that, like, when I saw them speaking at the funeral, Obama was like, I think Obama appreciates Trump for saying what he wished he could say.
Well, not just that, and they also were both saying, hey, we both won twice. So that
yeah. On Sunday, Val Jarrett went on CNN to defend her pal, President Obama. I wonder if the president prides himself on the fact that his administration hasn't had a scandal and that he hasn't done something to embarrass himself.
The president prides himself on the fact that his administration hasn't had a scandal and that he hasn't done anything to embarrass himself.
Now that's a low bar for achievement. He hasn't embarrassed himself. But it's true, no one on his staff was caught in bed with a giraffe yet.
They both wear martyrdom-like fashion. They left the White House with $60 million, 0 cents in book deals, a production company, speaking fees that could fund a moon base, and yet they still act like the victims of historical injustice. At this point, they're not even political figures. They're cultural avatars wrapped in inspirational throw pillows. But perhaps the most absurd part of the Obama era isn't what they did, it's how the media treated them. Every eyebrow raise was breaking news. Every jog up an airplane stare was a metaphor. Every mildly coherent sentence was labeled oratory genius. If Barack said hello, CNN analyzed the tone for 3 hours. If Michelle wore a blouse, Vogue called it revolutionary. They turned regular activities, walking, waving, sitting, into master classes of democratic elegance. They're the only couple in history who could go on vacation and be described as gracefully battling injustice through leisure. The press followed them like golden retrievers chasing a tennis ball made of hope and branding. The Obamas didn't just get coverage, they got canonized. Historians wrote about them like they were ancient gods who occasionally tweeted. And yet, when you strip away the pomp, what remains? A healthcare law with more patches than a pirate's coat. A foreign policy that birthed more conflicts than it solved. A domestic record more invested in vibes than results. And a cultural legacy built on the idea that condescension is compassion if it's delivered in complete sentences. They're like political in-laws constantly offering advice. No one asked for, delivered with a smug smile and a TED Talk cadence. Barack now floats above current events like a philosopher king on a cloud of curated wisdom, occasionally swooping down to tell you how disappointed he is in democracy, then vanishing into a vineyard fundraiser. Michelle does pop-ins to remind you she's had enough of politics right before announcing a new initiative. That sounds suspiciously like politics, but sure. Let's pretend they're just humble citizens now, watching from the sidelines like retired saints. Meanwhile, every public appearance is staged like the season finale of a prestige drama. Dramatic lighting, expensive sets, and a soft piano soundtrack to remind you this is supposed to matter. The only thing missing? Results. Because while the speeches are pretty, the aftermath is just quinoa and confusion.